Good morning and welcome. Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason on this Friday. Yeah, I hope it finds you well out there. Oh, man, what another crazy week in the books, wrapping up the month of January. You know what? Sit back, relax, strap on that seatbelt. Leave the drive-in to Jason and I as we wrap up this week. Listen, I got to start out with I screwed up yesterday. I know it doesn't happen very often. The good news is when I screw up, nobody dies. So that's a positive. But, yesterday I was looking at these charts, and the place that I go and I look, they had it labeled wrong. I should have known it was wrong. The contract for gold now, the TV contract for gold, it's now an April contract, not a February contract. So I want to apologize for that boo-boo. But gold, a new all-time record high again today as we wait. Is it going to be tariffed or not to be tariffed? Nobody seems to know the answer, as tomorrow is supposed to be the day, but it has gotten extremely quiet, and we've still got hearings going on. We had an inflation number come out, and well, it's been like all the inflation numbers lately, hotter than expected. Our toll-free number, 800-951-0592. The website at allamericangold.com. Jason, I'll say this, very interesting things kind of developing here today. We do get that hotter inflation number. We don't know about the tariffs, if they're going to it. The tariffs we're talking about, Canada and Mexico. The deadline was supposed to be February 1, but it's gotten quiet. So I'm not sure if they're going to come into effect and not come into effect. I guess we'll have to talk about it on Monday if they do or not. And then more out of DeepSeek. We got to keep talking about it. So obviously, two things we know. This is, of course, the Chinese AI version. Yup, they pulled it off. Right, they have a version that's better than what we've got, and as far as better, let me clarify better. It costs less by a lot, right? So that's what's better. They can do the same things, right? However good AI is, but they can do it for a lot less. NVIDIA the other day said, oh, yeah, hey, it's a huge step forward, and by the way, everything's legit. Everything's across the board. Right? They didn't buy any illegal chips. Well, today, that may not be factual. Bloomberg is reporting that it may be likely that NVIDIA, of course, maybe knew all along that China has been buying illegal chips from them through a third party in Singapore. Now, here's what gets interesting about this report. According to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, so we got the FBI involved. It's trying to determine whether DeepSeek used intermediaries in the Southeast Asian nation to purchase the NVIDIA chips that the U.S. has banned from sale to China. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Apparently, 20% of all NVIDIA chips, and I guess these illegal chips, sold have been to Singapore. Now, here's the only problem with Singapore. They don't really have companies developing AI, Jason. So obviously, something doesn't smell right. The They weren't buying these chips for their own domestic use, and it appears anyway from the report, if it's true, obviously, they're still investigating, but if it's true, we may have an issue with that. NVIDIA could be losing 20% of its sales if they shut off Singapore. And again, how much did NVIDIA know, and how much did they not know when it comes to this? And I got to keep saying it. If it appears that this is the case, which, quite honestly, it kind of looks like this is the case, Jason.
And then how will NVIDIA do when the dust settles, Joe? What do you expect on that side?
Well, here's the thing. The damage is already done, right? They've developed this better model. They obviously have access to a whole lot more of these chips than anybody ever thought. And we know the one thing. What is China really good at? Right? They're really good at reverse engineering. So, again, I don't know here, but it certainly does look like there's been some nefarious dealings. Go figure, right? One of our Wall Street darlings, NVIDIA, may have not only known about it, kind of turned a blind eye. Hey, and I guess, right, how many degrees of separation does it take, right? Hey, we sold it to Singapore, We don't know what they did with it. They told us they were using it for their own stuff, right? Not our problem. And then you start looking at the amounts that they sold, and you're like, whoa, wait. Okay, it's not like you sold them a little bit, right? Patriot Radio News Hour. Isn't it great? Hey, why is gold running to records? We're going to talk about that. 800-951-0592. Quick look in here at the markets. The Dow's up 25. The S&P's up 40. The Nasdaq's up 270, mostly on Apple. And the thing about it was Apple news wasn't great, but Apple had been under pressure. Sales revenue down 11% in China. By the way, just interesting. Apple calls China now the most competitive market in the world. And it really is kind of interesting. A lot of Americans that are working in China describing a situation where, the Chinese government, it is communist, but there's a lot of capitalism in the streets in China, and it's kind of interesting, the picture that's being painted here. Crude oil's flat. Gold, like we said, gold is up again here. Right now, February gold, well, I guess still January. Last day of January here, up 17, 28.13 right now on gold. Been as high as 28.23. By the way, TV gold, as I said, 28.60. How long will it be in the 28s? That's a good question. I don't know that it'll stay very long in the 2,800 range. We'll see. It has that feeling like we're going to just zip right onto it. We may be setting ourselves up for a quick push to 3,000 before gold consolidates again. And I think a lot of that will depend on what happens with the tariffs. And do they go into effect? Are they really going to be 25% and those things? So we'll have to wait and see, but it has that feel. Well, correct, now gold's up 20. 28.16 now. Like I said, TV gold 28.60. Silver, not big day yesterday, so let's not kid ourselves. 31.50. March silver, 32.50, right? So TV silver, 32.50. 50 and 32. I told you 31 for spot was a big deal. 32. That was a big, big deal. Closing above 32 for the March contracts. Right now, don't be surprised. The ability for silver to go and test the recent highs of $35 are now on the table. And again, I still think it's going to depend on what happens with these tariffs. Are we going to get tariffs? Are we not going to get tariffs? Are they going to be 25%? Are they not going to be 25%? Have no idea. Then, once that's decided, then we're going to figure out, okay, February is going to be a big month. The Treasury's got to increase auction sizes. Now, I don't know if they can do it during the debt ceiling because, we're on the emergency measures. So I don't know. Then, of course, we need a budget, right? So they've got, till the beginning of March. So a lot of important things in the pipe in February, at least locally. When we think about what's been going on right now, a lot of it has to do with tariffs, the border, war, and then, of course, all the executive orders and the confirmation hearings. February, I think some of this shifts, Jason, and now we'll go back to focusing in on how bad is the United States in fiscally, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But it is interesting that gold and silver, we said this at the beginning of the year. It really didn't matter, right? If Trump put the tariffs on, didn't put it on, if he ended the war, didn't end the war, closed the border, didn't close the border. It was almost one of these scenarios where it didn't matter what the decisions were. Gold was going to head higher. And the interesting part, at least for right now, it seems like the decisions that have been made or are being made are the most bullish for the gold and silver cause.
Yeah, it might not even matter which, if the tariffs take place or not. Gold and silver might use this as an excuse to just push higher anyways. You can point out the fear of tariffs.
I think no tariff Monday, gold's going to be a lot higher. I think that would be dollar weakness, and I think that you would see gold going much higher because then they would say, okay, inflation's not going to get even worse, so maybe the Fed could cut rates again. That's just my prediction. If there's no tariffs with Canada and Mexico, I think gold could go a lot higher.
But if there is tariffs, shouldn't it do the same? Because, you see these last-minute shipments come from the UK, so wouldn't that be, okay, we're going to try to get as much cheap gold in the country right before the deadline. So it seems like with the tariff, gold goes higher. So our predictions we made yesterday when we opened the show on Monday, I'm starting to feel a little more optimistic that I might beat you on that.
Well, and I kind of screwed that prediction up because that wasn't the February contract that was that high, but you're right. There's a potential for that. This is what I'm saying. Look at what Jason and I just talked about. We're arguing about the difference between no tariff and tariff, and both of us are kind of like, hey, don't be surprised if gold goes higher no matter which one. Right? And maybe it's a debate as to how high. I think we'll go higher without the tariffs initially. The problem is, or I shouldn't even say the problem, the difference will be with the tariffs. I think initially it may slow gold's roll, but you give it a couple of weeks, and I think gold's going to explode, right? So short term, the no tariff, you may get the faster spike up, but longer term, the tariffs will be better. But let me give you the number today. So this is the quote-unquote Fed's favorite crap. Okay, so anytime the Fed says, this is our favorite number, oh, yes, we just love this number so much. Just understand what that means. This is the most manipulated number. So whatever it tells you it's doing, it's really not. Right? So this one happens to be the inflation favorite number, the CPE and core CPE. And just know this. This is the Fed screwing us over with their, they sat in a room and they came up with this logic that, hey, if certain things get expensive, they'll just stop buying it. And if they stop buying it, is it really inflation? And let's seasonally adjust this and seasonally adjust that. I look at this number today. Think about a person that's been a chain smoker, 2-3 packs a day for 20, 30 years. Notice how those guys, they can't taste anything, right? So when they season their food, right, it would be, there's so much salt and pepper in there, it's like just because they can't taste. This is this. Headline, CPE came in at 2.6%. By the way, that was higher than expected. The core PCE, which allegedly was the old favorite Fed inflation number, that came in at 2.8%. So I guess the good news is, if you want to call it good news, it didn't get the 3%. But then remember, the Fed had us a new favorite number, the so-called super core. So, you had the regular number, then you had the core number, now you got the super core number. Well, guess what? The super core number, above 4, just below 4%. 3.6%, nowhere close to their mandate. By the way, the Fed also said the cost of goods continues to rise, and so does income and spending. So when we look at it, income up 0.4%, right? That's red hot, right? When you think about that, they're like, okay, that's just below 5% a year. Think about labor. For most companies, labor is their number one expense. It's number one. If the Fed is telling us it's rising about 5% a year, what is it really rising, right? But here's what's worse. Spending up 0.7%. Now, I know I went to public school, but Jason, when I do the math, right, if your wages are going up 0.4% over the course of a year, that would be 4.8%. But if you've got to spend 0.7 more, right, we've got a little bit of a problem, don't we? Right? When we look at the consumer now, we have a situation where they're almost spending twice as much as what their incomes are going up just to stay where they're at. So this is kind of what the Fed has put out there today. And again, any more inflation on top of that, Jason, makes both of those numbers worse, because you're going to have to pay more, and at the same time, they're going to have to, the end users got to, they got to shell out more for the same stuff.
Yeah, well, and on top of that, that's what inflation is, shelling out more for the same stuff. So let's just compound it, right? That's what we're in.
It's interesting, because when you sit there and you look at this, there's nothing good out of these reports. They're way above what the Fed says they want it to be. But when you look at this, remember we talked about GDP yesterday, how it was a really tough number because it was all driven by the consumer and by the government. Way above, which just, again, and I don't think, and everybody's different, but it appears that every month that goes by, another, and pick a number. Is it 50,000 households? Is it 100,000 households? End up getting to the end of the rope, Jason. When we're seeing this in repos, and automobile repossessions, we're seeing in credit card non-payments, we're seeing in credit card minimum payments, and so this is, this number today says don't cut rates. I think that's kind of the biggest thing that Donald Trump's like, you need to cut rates so we can unleash the spending. The problem is, the Fed's like, well, gosh, inflation's way too high, so we can't do it.
Yeah, spending is dying all over the place, right, Joe? People just aren't buying stuff. I mean, they're exhausted, and like you said, the place you go when your paycheck doesn't do it, and then your savings doesn't do it, it goes to credit, it goes to debt, and I think. What are they going to do, Joe? What are they going to do once you've gone through the savings, you've gone through the credit, and your paycheck isn't covering it? I saw a thing yesterday. Walmart, right? Walmart is going to slow their wage increases, and they're going to start laying off people. It's kind of like the consumer. That's the end game. That's the end consumer situation, right? That's the end of the line for cheapness, right?
Well, and again, think about it. Walmart's like, hey, here's a way we can control prices, right? Do more with less, right? Pay less, have less employees. You don't have to raise prices as much. Patriot Radio News Hour will be back. 800-951-0592. Today we've got $20 gold. Look at how they keep moving here, obviously, with silver going higher, $28.40 on a $20 gold piece today, right? We're talking about April gold, almost $28.60. And then 5-ounce silver bars. Got those on sale today. Because I get it. Like a lot of people, gosh, I don't have $2,850 or $2,840. I wish I did. $170 on a 5-ounce silver bar. Remember, we got the March silver contract just flying, man. 32.5. And so get it put away. 800-951-0592, and then we'll just keep watching. Right? We have most of the world cutting rates, not all of it, most of it. The U.S. we were on a pause, but don't worry, because they said, well, they took out the part that they were making progress on inflation. But they said they were just shortening the sentence. Not because they weren't making progress, which they haven't been. I mean, right? We all know they haven't been making progress, but when we start thinking about, okay, what comes next? Right? So we've gotten through, the first couple, 10 days of the Trump inauguration. We've had a lot of excitement, a lot of bluster. But now the hard work really is coming in. How big do the Treasury auctions need to be? How soon can we get the debt ceiling raised? How soon can we come up with a budget? And how much can the Trump administration cut out of the federal government while still extending tax cuts, while still trying to do this, the spending that they would want to do? That is going to be one of the harder things when we look about what the government needs to be able to do. How effective can DOGE be so far? Listen, they find plenty of stuff, right? $50 million for condoms in Gaza. I mean, I don't know how many condoms is that? I mean, if we're going to send stuff to Gaza, wouldn't it be food? Sounds like a lot better option. But, again, who knows, right? They say it was condoms. We don't know. 15 million on the same thing. Apparently we want less condoms in Afghanistan. Only $15 million for that. That was a $100 million package for Middle East countries to support basic rights and freedoms of women and girls who live under the Taliban. Really? I don't think $100 million is going to get the Taliban to change their mind. $10,000 for I can't make this up, $10,000 for an ice skating drag show. Yep. By the way, what was the ice skating drag show about? Climate change. In case you didn't know, right? That makes sense. I mean, because obviously you want it to be ice skating because they're saying that it's too hot. So you got to have ice skating. And then why not drag, right? Because that's really sends the message that something's wrong with the climate. By the way, they spent over $1 trillion, in which we know, right? That was what was that? The Inflation Reduction Plan. That's what they called it. Yeah. See, apparently no one told the Biden administration that by spending more money, you actually increase inflation no matter what. But any event, in that, $10,000 was a grant for Beards on Ice. Yep, Beards on Ice. The Bearded Ladies Cabaret, by the way. $20 million of our tax dollars spent on a Sesame Street spinoff in Iraq that was designed to promote inclusion. So, yep, I wonder what that looked like. I'm going to have to look that up. If somebody can find the $20 million Sesame Street spinoff, I would love to see it. They said in an effort to promote inclusion and mutual respect. And, we're thinking about this. Listen, we all know $20 million is a lot of money. The problem is the government spends $20 million by the time I finish this sentence. $1.5 million to study how various species respond to motion sickness. Yep. Well, I'm sure that is going to be beneficial to somebody. In one of the experiments, holes were drilled into the skull of young kittens. That's not very good. I don't know why you'd have to do that, but apparently if you drill a hole in their skull, they get motion sickness. I don't know. You strap the animal on the table and you spin them around. Listen, you can't make any of this stuff up, and somebody thought this was a good idea, and obviously, right, they didn't read it, right? They didn't read it, and if they did, right, then I've got an even bigger problem with this. But I guess, wouldn't it just be easier putting them in a washer or a dryer and turn it on and see what happens? Yeah, but apparently this is what we've done. And again, this was all coming out of Doge, and all of these things were ridiculous. I think we could all agree. But add that up. It doesn't add up to much, right? When you're talking about we need trillions of dollars, it's just not something where I don't think it can be done. How about, I hate to say it, I want it to be done. growing out of it means gold prices are going to skyrocket. We're going to talk about that next. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason wrapping up this week. News breaking this week about the amount of gold leaving the vaults in London, having a lot of that gold coming here. Of course, a lot of it really going to China. But this is putting stress. So normally they're like, okay, China's buying a lot. These other central banks are buying a lot. We kind of got that covered. Stockpiles really low. And now all of a sudden, almost 400 metric tons of gold come to the COMEX. As people they're unsure about if gold and silver will be part of the Trump tariffs. And again, not talking about Mexico and Canada, right? This just tells you we're going to get a universal tariff. I don't know how much it's going to be. They need the money. And so, very smartly, a bunch of this stuff has made its way here. Now, here's the problem. Because that sounds like an incredible amount, but it just tells you how little gold the COMEX really had. This 393 metric tons that has been sent since the election. So this has been going on since Trump won the election in November. That only put the stockpiles at the COMEX back to August of 2022 levels at 926 tons. So when you think about it, not quite halfway, like a 35-40% increase in the supplies at the COMEX, but really just getting back to a somewhat more normal number and depleting the vaults in England. And again, Wednesday, the Financial Times reported that it's been 4 to 8 weeks for the London Exchange to make good on these physical deliveries. Normal delivery times, just so you know, is a few days, like 48 to 72 hours at most. Now we're talking 4 to 8 weeks, but London is, rest assured, say they are working with the COMEX and insist that we still have strong liquidity. Okay. Strong enough, I'm sure. Right? Are they going to be out of gold? Boy, I hope not. I hope not. I mean, they can borrow gold from central banks, and I'm sure that's what's happening right now. But here's the problem. They're saying that this 393 to the COMEX wasn't all of it. That HSBC and JP Morgan, which owns the gold vaults, the private gold vaults, those are the 9/11 gold vaults. That's the vaults we're talking about. That used to be, and I told this story once before, do you know that that's where all the IRAs used to be stored before 9/11? Yeah. HSBC Bank. Down in the basement, we called it. They're no longer stored there. And now HSBC and JP Morgan, they use those vaults for their own customers. And think about, a vault, one vault is like the size of a regular, like a standard bedroom. How many billions of dollars you can put in there. I mean, it's outrageous how much gold you can put in there. Billions. And according to the Financial Times, and Bloomberg is confirming, they're saying that those vaults have been filling up, as well as the vaults for the COMEX. So this is a situation here where you're starting to see the really big money getting prepared. This is a little different than the central banks preparing. So we now have this added piece here that we didn't have in November. You know, when we go back and we think about November, we still had all this, China and India and Poland and, every country under the sun, all the BRICS nations, all of them buying gold. Now with tariffs, and this is what's funny, because I haven't heard Donald Trump mention gold at all. I don't think it's likely, it's just my opinion, that gold will be included. I think it'll be exempt. I do. I mean, it is a tier 1 asset. And I think most of these rich people probably believe that too. I think this is just showing you that they already know what's going to happen. We have a situation where there's only two choices: grow and grow substantially, or die, right? In recession, depression. And they've already said we're going for growth. How high is gold going? I think that's really the question here. When we see this is unprecedented type volumes. It sure seems like the real smart money thinks gold's going a lot higher. Patriot Radio News Hour, final segment coming up. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason wrapping up this Friday. Just big moves here in gold and silver. Gold at a new all-time record high. Just remember, you know what? Robert Kiyosaki was out the other day. Rich people know what's real. Poor people don't. That's the difference. Gold is real. The dollar is just paper. And just remember, this is a good rule of thumb. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. Just that simple. And when you have an inflationary cycle like we're facing, that will become very, very clear. According to the London markets, the Financial Times, and talking about the flows of gold. So we're talking about gold going east to west, right? Right? East to west when it's coming to the U.S., but the vast majority of the gold from London is heading the other way. Over 1,000 metric tons of gold going through Switzerland, breaking every record the Swiss have ever had. Of course, where's all the Swiss gold go? China. Literally. I'm not even kidding. It's like 90%, 95% of it goes to China. Now, I don't believe this. People are speculating that China's buying 10 times more than they officially report. Listen, they're definitely buying more than what they're reporting. There's no doubt about it. 10 times more, though, I don't want to believe that number, because if that number is really true, what do we got, 2, 3, 4 years left, and then all of a sudden there's there's a major problem because there's not enough gold to go around? I mean, that seems outrageous.
Well, and shipping large amounts suddenly and quickly because of whatever's happening is not a sign of people or countries or entities being comfortable. That's usually a sign of coming to America in that fashion almost feels like a too little too late such situation. Like we better get some gold in here. So part of me wonders if there's nothing in Fort Knox, and it's like, we better fill Fort Knox up now because it's getting real. I wonder about stuff like that.
I don't know. I want to believe it's there. I truly do. And I think that here's the thing. This huge wave, it only brings the stockpile, back up to something more normal, which is crazy in how low that it's actually been allowed to get. And now, of course, the problem is London, which was already really low, now they're really, really low. And of course, behind the scene, like earlier this week, another mystery buyer. There's no mystery buyer. It's China. Here, I'll solve the. Well, again, you know what? I got to take that back. Because the Saudis were mystery buyers. The UAE was a mystery buyer. I'm going to say this. Don't make it a mystery. Be a buyer here. $20 gold pieces. 2,840. 5-ounce silver bars at 170 at 800-951-0592. Jason and I coming right back with the half-inch.